Hi, third grade. Today for math, we are going to start talking about fractions. So this will just be our kind of introductory lesson to fractions. So this is called fraction of a whole, and the two objectives today that I want you to leave with is to be able to recognize and name fraction of a whole, and then to make a whole with a fraction. So first we're going to start with the review of a fraction. What is a fraction? Well, a fraction is a part of a group. The part, as you can see here, is called the numerator, and it goes on the top. So the part is always on the top, the numerator. Say numerator. It's kind of a hard word. Now on the bottom, we always keep the whole. Not whole like hole in the ground, but whole like entire, whole pizza. And that's also called the denominator. Denominator, that's a big word too. So we have the part, and then underneath is the whole. And then this little bar in between our part and our whole is called a fraction bar. And that fraction bar just splits up our part from our whole, and that's basically its job. So when we're representing the fraction, the first thing that we think about is using shapes and models to represent our fraction. A whole shape is split into parts. As long as the model is divided into equal parts, it can be used to represent a fraction. For example, you could represent the fraction 1/2 if I shaded in one of these. 1/2, which is the whole. Or you could partition the circle into fourths, or you could partition it into thirds. You just have to make sure that when you split them all up, that they're the same size, that one part isn't bigger than another part. So here it shows how you can change a rectangle into two different partitions into equal parts. This one is split into 3 equal parts. This one is split into 6 equal parts, but when two of these are shaded in, it looks like one of these is shaded in over here. So that's kind of showing equivalent fractions, which is what we'll get into later this week. But I just wanted to show you that fractions can be shown as shapes or models. They can also be parts of a set. So like if you have 6 popcorn bowls, but only ate 3 popcorn bowls. So 3 were eaten, and there are 3 left. So our part would be 3, and our whole would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3/6. Same over here. 3 shaded in, 6 in all, 3/6. How about 4 shaded in, but 7 stars in all? So 4/6. 4/7. And you can do the same for the umbrellas. You can really use any picture that you want as long as you have a whole set of things and then color in just parts of it. Another way to represent fractions is a fraction bar. So that's kind of when you see 1/2 plus a half equals a whole. 1/3 plus a third plus a third equals a whole. A fourth plus a fourth plus a fourth plus a fourth equals a whole. 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 equals a whole. So those are fraction bars. So like if you split the fraction bar into 2 equal parts, it's still the same length as this one, it's just split differently. And the last way that we represent fractions that we're going to talk about is a fraction on a number line. And we kind of did this when we were talking about our inches. Remember we made our giant inches and we folded it in half, and that was 1/2 an inch. We folded it a second time, that was 1/4 of an inch. So this kind of splits up our number lines into 2 parts. So this is half of the line. Into 3 parts, 1, 2, 3. So this is 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, or a whole. Could split it into fourths, into fifths, split it into sixths. So there are 6 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then this one is in eighths. So you can really do a lot with number lines. Those look a little more tricky than some of our other things like our shapes, models, and our parts of a set. But they are really easy for some people who have a more numerical way of learning things instead of looking at pictures. Alright, going on with reviewing the fraction. Let's see if I can move this over a little bit so you can see it. There you go. Most of it. Get rid of that arrow. Okay, so here I have a shape and model part of a fraction. So this is 4 parts, well, 4 in all. So 4 goes on the bottom. And then how many is shaded? 1. So what is the fraction of the shaded part? The shaded part would be the part that is a different color. In this case, it is green. So the fraction of the shaded part is 1/4. But what is the fraction of the not shaded part? Well, 1, 2, 3. That would be 3/4. Okay, let's look at this one. This one's split into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different pieces. So our whole goes on the bottom, 6. And how many is shaded in? 1. But what if I wanted the fraction of the not shaded part? Well, how many aren't shaded? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we would have 5/6. Remember what that bar is called in the middle? Right, a fraction bar. Good. Okay, let's also go over how to make a whole. Let's think about what happens when we take a fraction apart. So we have 3/4. What does that mean? Well, that means you have 3 1/4. So I have 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 gives me how many fourths? 3/4. So all you're really doing is adding that numerator, that top part, the part and not the whole. You're keeping the whole the same. Well, what happens if I take 4/5 apart? 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, right? I have 4 1/5. 4/5. So I'm only adding the top. 1, 2, 3, 4 equals 4/5. So when we're making a whole, the numerator and the denominator both need to be the exact same numbers. For example, 5/5, 5/5 equals 1. Because, did you know, a fraction bar is actually just another way to say this is a division problem. And did you know 5 divided by 5 is 1? Yep. 4/4, 4 parts are filled in of the whole 4. 4 divided by 4 equals 1. So 4/4 is the same as 1. 3/3 is equal to 1. 3 divided by 3 equals 1. If I have a circle, it's split into 3 parts, and all 3 of those parts are filled in. It's a whole. So if you have the same number on top of another number that is exactly the same, if your numerator and your denominator are the same, you have one whole. It's not a fraction anymore. It's one whole. Now, on your assignment after this, you are going to have a question kind of like this. It's going to give you a fraction bar. This is my half fraction bar. How many equal parts? It's going to ask you. Well, there are 2 parts, right? This whole fraction bar was split into 2 parts. But then it will ask you, how much is each part equal to? Well, let's look at this one part. What is one part of this? Well, that's equal to a half. So you would put 1 divided by 2. Well, how many equal parts are in this one? 1, 2, 3. There are 3 equal parts. Now, how much is each part equal to? Each part is equal to 1/3. Good. So that might have been a little confusing, so I just wanted to go over that part of your Google Slides that you have to do at the end. And then I also wanted to show you just some real life examples of fractions. A lot of times when we talk about them, they are using whole pieces of pizza, and then they kind of split them up into smaller pieces. So if you would split this 2/5 and 3/5, you would get 5/5 or a whole. And then watermelon, you could split it up into 8 pieces. So it's saying that if you have 3 plus 5, you would get your whole watermelon. 8 pieces of your watermelon. Okay, so make sure after you watch this video, you go to the Introduction to Fractions Google Slides that you need to finish in Google Classroom. And please make sure that you click the Turn In button in the top right-hand corner. Okay, because otherwise I'm not going to know if you completed it and I won't be able to grade it. Have a great day. Bye.